Hello, what is up guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, welcome to my channel. My name is Samantha, and in today's video I'm basically going to be talking about my labor and delivery. I don't have like footage of my labor and delivery, mostly because it was very crazy, and I had my mom and my fiance with me, and my fiance was basically my stress ball. Like, I was just squeezing the crap out of his hand the entire time. And my mom, she took some pictures and stuff, which I will insert as I kind of talk through the story. But she didn't think that I wanted video of me screaming my head off in the hospital. So she didn't film any of that, but I do have some pictures. I have some video of right before the baby was born and then right when he was born, so I will insert that as well. But let's just hop right on into it. So I'm gonna start on the morning that I went into labor. I actually had a doctor appointment that morning. It was March 12th, and I had an appointment at 9 a.m. and it was just, to get checked, whatever. I was, I guess, how far? I was 39 and a half weeks pregnant. So I went in there and my doctor checked me. I still wasn't dilated. He didn't say how effaced I was, but the week before I was 70% effaced. But he said I wasn't dilated at all, and he said, hopefully the baby comes this weekend. I don't think he will. And he scheduled me for a recheck on Monday, where he wanted to scrape my membranes if he could, if I was dilated at all, because you do have to be at least 1 centimeter dilated to do that. And then we would be talking about induction from that point, because my due date was on that Tuesday. The 17th. So after that appointment, I went home, and after being checked, I was always kind of crampy after. I never bled after, but I was just really crampy and uncomfortable. And so I went home and I was kind of just messing around with my fiance. I was like, baby needs to come out now, and I was like talking to the baby, and I was like, all right dude, doctor says he wants you out now, it's time, come on. And I honestly was scared. I didn't want to go into labor. I feel like most people want to go into labor. I was terrified, not for labor at all, because I never was scared of labor. I knew it would be horrible. I didn't know what I was expecting, so all I knew is it was going to be the worst pain I've ever felt, and there's no point in worrying because you can't stop that. So, but I was in a weird place where I was more scared just because my entire life was completely changing and there was no turning back, and I was scared to be a mom, and I always said this is what I wanted, but then right when it was about to happen, I was like, holy shit, I don't know if I can actually handle this. So I didn't actually want him to come. I was not doing anything to actually try to induce labor. I was bouncing and just waving my hips or whatever on a exercise ball, but that was actually just because it felt good for me, and I was joking about it, all right, time to get this baby out. And then I started getting cramps, light menstrual cramps every 3 minutes. And it just it was every 3 minutes I would get a cramp, and then it would stop, cramp, stop. And I was like, there's no way that my contractions just started and they're already 3 minutes apart. There's no way. And I was like, and this really, it's not super uncomfortable. It's just minimal cramping. I can still walk, I can still do whatever. So I was like, there's no way this is actual contractions. So I was like, whatever, I'll time them. I don't think this is anything, but because they're consistent, let me just time it. So I started timing them, and I basically said, you know, if this goes on for an hour, then I'll call my doctor and ask what they think I should do. So I timed them for an hour. They were consistently 3 minutes apart for a whole hour. And then after an hour, I was like, maybe one more hour. And then during that hour, they gradually started getting closer together, so they got to 2 minutes apart. And so at that point, I went downstairs and I kind of told my mom, because my mom is like a crazy person. Like, if I told her anything, she would just want to drive me to the hospital. So I didn't want to like overreact, and I knew my mom would only overreact. So I was super hesitant to even tell her, but I went downstairs and I was like, so don't go crazy on me. Don't go all Dr. Google, because that's what she does. She just starts searching things on the internet. I was like, it's just light cramping. I think it's just because he checked me, but it's weird because they're now 2 minutes apart. And she's like, well, you should like see how long they last for. And I was like, well, I've been calculating it for 2 hours now, and they went from 3 minutes to now 2 minutes. And she instantly was like, well, you need to call your doctor. I was like, but I don't want to be like a crazy person. Like, I was just there. By this point, it was like 12:30 to 1-ish. And I was like, I literally was just there. I got checked around like 10 a.m. Like, there's no way that like I would be dilated or changed or anything like that. Like, it's not labor. And she's like, you've always said labor can happen quickly, like you don't know. And I was like, whatever. So another like 30 minutes go by, and then they got to like 1 minute and 30 seconds apart. And so at that point, my mom was like, just call your doctor's office. So I called, and they were on their lunch break from 12 to 2, which would have been another like 30 minutes. And they started getting closer, so my mom drove me to my doctor's office, which is literally just like 5 minutes away from the house. So we drove to the doctor's office, and I walked in there and I was like, I know I was just here. My mom thinks I'm in labor. I'm having cramps every minute and a half apart. What should I do? And she just said, well, your doctor just left. Like, he's gone. Like, he went on a trip or something. And they told me to just go straight to the hospital. And I was like, well, I don't want to go to the hospital if it's not labor, like whatever. And so they had my old doctor check me and all that. So they hooked me up. They did a NST, non-stress test, and it was showing that I was having consistent contractions. They left me there for about, I feel like 20 minutes. Monitoring it, and the contractions definitely like got a little stronger. I was like more uncomfortable. Plus, when you're doing an NST, like you're laying like flat on your back, and that position was always just uncomfortable for me when I was pregnant. So they did that, and then the doctor came in and she was like, well, you're definitely having contractions. And like it was showing my contractions going to like the number like 30 mark. Like that was like the highest peak was a 30. And she told the nurse, like, oh, you put the band on a weird spot. Like, I typically like to put it more wherever. So the doctor moved the band that calculates, like, the contractions. And she's like, let me just put it here really quick for 5 minutes, and then I'll come back and I'll check it. And those 5 minutes were horrible, like, crying. Like, I was crying in there. I was all by myself because my mom was in the waiting room. Because the whole coronavirus, she wasn't allowed back there anyway. And so basically my doctor came back like 5 minutes later, and because she had moved it to the right spot, the number for my contractions was going to like 100. And she was like, oh wow, like you really are having like contractions. And I was like, oh, like I guess, okay. And they were super close together. They were about every minute. So she then checked me, and I was 1 centimeter dilated. And she said, you know, you can go home, you can rest for a little bit, you know, walk around, take a shower, and then go to the hospital. or you can go straight to the hospital. And I was like, well, don't you have to be like a certain amount dilated before they'll actually like admit you? Like, I don't want to go just for them to like send me home when I'm like not feeling great. And she said that the hospital will admit me if my doctor recommended it, and my doctor said, she's like, you are in labor, like you're having your baby. I will tell them like you can be admitted. So we got home and my fiance was at work. I called him, I said, we're having a baby, like you need to come home. And he didn't realize like how much pain I was in at this point. Like it was getting bad. Like the second I left the doctor's office, I was like uncomfortable. Like I would have to stop when I would have a contraction, which was every minute, and like I was crying, I was just uncomfortable, and they were definitely starting to hurt. So I was scared of like I was scared that everything was going to happen so fast, so I just wanted to get to the hospital as soon as possible because we also lived 30 minutes away from the hospital. So because things seemed like they were progressing so quickly, I did not want to wait. So I called Ben, and he actually took a little bit longer than expected. He didn't leave right away because he didn't realize like he didn't realize I was in pain basically, because when he had left I was just cramping and confused what was happening. And so basically his uncle, who he works for, went back to their house to pick up their lunch and all that, and had to pick up his wife to basically take Ben's spot. So she had to get ready really quick, and Ben was like kind of just the only person at the ice cream place while he picked up his wife and whatever, so that someone could take Ben's spot. So Ben didn't get to the house, I feel like, for like another 30 minutes, and I kept calling him and I was like, where are you? He's like, I'm on my way, or I'm at the gate, and there was a long line at the gate and blah blah blah. Because I went back to my parents' house, we packed up like the stuff in the car, and then I was gonna drive with Ben to the hospital. So Ben finally got home. I told him like, run upstairs, grab a bag, fill it with some clothes, and we need to leave. Like I'm dying, like literally dying. So the whole car ride there, I was like uncomfortable, and I was like moaning and crying, and we got to the hospital and they checked me, and I was still only 1 centimeter dilated. And at this point I was in a lot of pain, and I was upset that I hadn't progressed any farther. And honestly, the times, like I can't tell you when things were happening, because everything's kind of like the times when you're in labor and when you like first have a baby, like time just like doesn't exist anymore. Like you think it's 1 o'clock, but really it's 10 p.m. Like it's just so confusing. So we were at the hospital. I was still only 1 centimeter dilated. I was in a ton of pain. My contractions were every minute, and they started getting really, really bad, to the point where I literally was screaming. So as my contraction went up, like you can feel a contraction like literally go from 0 to 100. Like, so I would be like a low like ooh, and then I would gradually go up, up, up as my contraction went up, and it would go into a full-on scream, and I was just screaming ow. Like it was the only thing that helped me. And my doctor was just like, breathe, don't scream, just breathe through it. And I'm like, nope, the screaming's helping, like not the breathing's full, like no, the breathing does shit. Like the screaming is what I feel, okay? I don't feel the like, no, I feel like I want to scream ow. So that's what I was doing, and they checked me again. I was 2 centimeters dilated. So because I was progressing, I guess, and then they also saw that because I had like my gown on and like I was naked, so they saw some fluid. So they did a little swab to test it, and it was my water. So my water did break, But it wasn't like a full gush. Like I never felt a gush. It was just like gradually leaking, which is still good, obviously. Like I'm glad that my body did what it was ultimately supposed to do. So things were happening, and then I started getting into a ton of pain, and they were able to give me some kind of medicine. I really don't know what it was. And they gave me this when I was 2 centimeters dilated. It basically just went into my IV, and it kind of makes you feel, I guess, high or drunk. I don't really know. I think high. I've never been high or drunk, so I was on this, and it kind of just like makes you like foggy. Like I had to really, like I went on my phone afterwards because it was helping so much. You definitely still feel stuff, and like the bad contractions you will feel, and it's like, ow, like you still like scream a little bit, but the like minimal contractions, it like takes those away. So you have more of like a break in between your contractions, which was super nice because I was actually able to relax a little bit. But I tried to go on my phone during this time, and I would literally have to like squint and just focus so hard on what I was like typing or just even looking at. Like my brain just like was a fog. Like it was so weird feeling. I couldn't even go on my phone because I just felt so weird, and it was hard to even just hold my phone up. Like it took so much concentration. But that medicine only lasted about, I feel like 30 minutes, maybe an hour, because time flies, but it felt like maybe like 30 minutes. And then out of nowhere, it got so painful. Like I was fine having like some contractions, like ow, uncomfortable. And then it literally went from 0 to 1,000 in 2 seconds. I thought something went wrong. I thought the baby just freaking was about to fly out of me. I don't know. But it literally felt like I went from 2 centimeters dilated to a full on 10. And I was freaking out. Like I was screaming off the top of my lungs. This medicine was doing nothing anymore. I don't know if the medicine like wore off or what, but like I was dying, literally dying. I was screaming. I just didn't even know what to do. And so I was, backtrack a tiny bit. When I first got there, they also did take my blood, and they ran it, and my white blood cell count was elevated, which means my body was fighting some kind of infection or something. So they did start me on antibiotics as well. So I was on antibiotics for every 4 hours. They gave me a bag of antibiotics. Also, my washing machine's going, so if you hear that, I'm sorry. It just got really loud. But anyway, so yeah, I started just screaming like the top of my lungs. It was so painful. And I was just grabbing onto Ben. I was yelling at my mom. I was like, you need to get a nurse in here now. Like I'm hitting my button. Ben's hitting the button. My mom's going out there. Like she says she needs help. Like, and they're like, yeah, okay. Like we'll be there in a second. And I was just scared. I literally thought the baby was gonna come out. No epidural. I wanted an epidural so bad. And eventually, after I feel like 30 minutes, a nurse came in and checked me, and I was 3 centimeters dilated. And I was like, does this mean I can get the epidural now? Like you said, if my body like progresses more, I can get it. And they said yes, but the anesthesiologist was in the middle of an emergency, and there was only one anesthesiologist there that could do my epidural, which was so upsetting for me because I was in excruciating pain. And to hear that, like, yes, you can get this thing that's gonna take all your pain away, but that person's busy, so that's the only reason why you can't have it right now. It literally just upset me so much, which it's not their fault. Like, it really isn't, obviously. But, like, there was no, like, yeah, it's only gonna take 10 minutes, or, you know, it'll be 30 minutes. Like, they had no time frame. Like they had no idea how long this emergency would take. I don't know what happened, but they just had no idea. And that was the hardest thing for me, because it wasn't like I could look forward to something because I didn't know how long it would take. So, and I also wasn't even in a delivery room because they were so full. There was like so many people having babies this day. And I was basically in a tiny room that used to be a office, like storage closet area. So it was super, super tiny. And at this point, while I'm screaming in pain, they're like, oh, we have a delivery room available. Like, we can move you now. So this girl comes in my room with the wheelchair, and she's like, all right, we're gonna move you. And I'm screaming, and I was like, I'm not getting in a wheelchair. I can't get up, like I cannot move. I tried to stand up once because they said like, oh, sometimes standing like helps with their contractions or whatever. No, it did not work with me. I stood up and I fell to the floor like I was in pain. And so I straight up told her, I was like, I'm not getting in the wheelchair. Like, there's no way I'm able to get out of this bed. And so she left and I guess talked to my nurse or something. And then she came back in and she's like, all right, are you ready to try to get in the wheelchair now? And I just looked at her again, and I feel so bad for being so rude, but like, your girl was in pain. And I was just like, no, there's no way I'm getting in that. Like, you need to figure out something else. Like, wheel me in my bed. I'm not getting in that. And then so my nurse came in and they were able to wheel my bed to the delivery room, but my bed wasn't a delivery bed. Like, it didn't, I don't know, it was, I guess, an older one, not like the newer ones, so they didn't have like the things on the side. I don't know, the bed didn't have something that they normally use in the delivery rooms, but that's the only way that they could get me in a delivery room. And so they brought me in there, and then a while later the anesthesiologist came in. Thank God. Like, the second I saw him, I was like, finally. But it was time for me to antibiotics put in. So I had to, they told me like, hey, the anesthesiologist is ready for you, but your white blood cell is so high, we have to give you these antibiotics. So it'll take 10 minutes for the antibiotics to fully go in. And then once that 10 minutes is done, he's gonna come right in and do the epidural. So at this point, I was like, you promise it's only 10 minutes? Like, that's all this antibiotic takes? And she was like, yeah. So at that point, I felt a lot better just knowing that I was soon gonna get the epidural. So I had my antibiotics, the 10 minutes was done, anesthesiologist came right in. It was slightly hard to like set up and like lean over and all that because I was in pain. I was having contractions so consistently and like so close together. But I was like, just stab me already, like I was ready, like, so I pushed through it. The guy was so nice. He, you know, they explained everything. He's like, all right, you're gonna feel me clean off your back 3 circles with a wet wipe, and then I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do that, and then you're gonna feel this. And he like showed me the wire, like the size of the epidural, and just everything like that. And so it was super great because I knew every step that was happening as he was doing it. So once I got the epidural, also only Ben was allowed to be there, and my mom had to wait outside for 30 minutes while they did it. So I got the epidural. It literally did not hurt at all. It felt a little weird, but it did not hurt whatsoever. And then they laid me down, and they call it like a tester in to like make sure it numbs fully, like I guess like the right amount of the medicine. And it literally feels like water dripping, like running down your back, but it's like inside your back. Weirdest feeling ever. It doesn't hurt, but it's just very strange. So once they did the tester medicine, it started working right away. It took like, I think 5 minutes for my contractions to go away, and I felt so much better. I didn't feel my contractions at all. I was able to relax.
Say hi to the camera.
I really didn't sleep much through the night because I was just in an uncomfortable position. I was like laying on my back, I couldn't get comfy. I had so many things like attached to me, and there was just no position I could get comfortable in. So, plus people were constantly coming in and checking on me, and my monitors kept beeping or doing something. So I didn't really sleep much, but gosh, I don't even know what time, but early morning, like still nighttime, but early morning on the 13th now, I was feeling a lot of pressure, a lot of pain down there. And I was like, and my legs started feeling less numb, and I was like, I think my epidural's wearing off, like I'm confused. So I told my nurse, and she was like, yeah, just press this button every 10 minutes once it like flashes green, and it'll just give you more. And I'm convinced that they just say that to make you feel like you're doing something, because I'm pretty sure it did nothing every single time. Like I was sitting there staring at it. After 10 minutes, the second it turned green, I would hit it because I was starting to feel stuff, and it was freaking me out, and I was so scared that my epidural was just gonna be gone. And then I was like, I think his head is there. Like, I'm pretty sure it's there. And so she checked me, and she said I was 8 centimeters dilated, and that basically I had like a sac of amniotic fluid still that kind of collected right in my vagina, and then his head was right behind it. So because my water hadn't fully broken, it was like leaking. It basically had collected up in this little, basically water balloon right in there, which is exactly what it felt. It felt like a water balloon, and then I could tell that his head was behind it. Like when she said it, it made total sense. It was very strange. And she said, as his head gets lower, it'll probably pop and you'll feel a gush, and once you feel that, call me, because that means things are probably gonna happen pretty quickly. So I never felt like a full gush, but I started feeling a lot more leaking. And so I called her, and she checked me, and she, I guess, could tell that it was leaking, but she basically just pulled it out herself because she was able to, which literally just felt like a water balloon coming out your vagina. Very strange feeling. And then shortly after that, I know my mom had noticed blood in my catheter bag, and my nurse said, you know, oh, I see blood in your catheter bag, whatever. That's normal. The baby's like rubbing on your bladder and stuff like that, whatever. And then I guess the baby's heart rate went down or something. I really don't know. They didn't tell me, but they put oxygen on me. And then they brought a bunch of nurses in, and they started setting up like the table where the baby was gonna go and all this.
I love the sound of feel heartbeat. It's like, I don't know, just always liked it. Soothing for me almost. Weird.
And when she took the water sac thing out of my vagina, she noticed some meconium, which is a baby's first poop. Babies poop outside the womb normally, like they poop when they come out, which is what they're supposed to do, but he had his first poop inside of me, and they had said that it was a little dangerous because when he comes out, if he inhales or ingests any of this poop, it can be dangerous and like cause sepsis and things like that. So they told me the second he comes out that they're going to start suctioning his airways and things like that really quickly, and that they might not be able to put him directly on me. They might need to bring him straight to the table. So they kind of warned me about that. And then I spiked a fever of 104. And so I believe that's when they started me on more antibiotics. And then it was, I was saying, like, I feel like my body is pushing on its own. Like, I was in a ton of pain, and it basically just felt like I was pushing, but I wasn't, and I couldn't stop it. And so they're like, good, like, your body is doing it, like, it's working its way, whatever. And I was 10 centimeters dilated. My doctor got there. She came in, and I was like telling her, she was like, well, you just let me know like when you feel the urge to push. I was like, I can push now, like I feel like I can. And so I started pushing, and then she like told me to stop, and then she was like, if you feel the need to push again, let me know. And so she told me to like stop pushing really quick, and said if I have to, tell her. And the nurses quickly dropped the table. My doctor like went like a few steps away. She starts like gowning up. Everyone's like running around getting things together. It had just been a shift change at this point. I believe it was like probably 7:10, 7:15, and the shifts change at 7, so it was a bunch of new people. My original nurse was actually still there. She was like the sweetest person ever. I love her so much. And so she was just kind of like in the room, but everyone was like running around. And then I looked at my doctor and I was like, I need to push right now, like I have to. And so I started pushing before my doctor had even gone over to me. And so you can see like my doctor's like putting everything on, and she runs over, and I guess the head was like right there, and she's like, he's right there, like you need to keep pushing. And I was like, I looked at her, I was like, don't lie to me and tell me he's right there if he's not, because like I always thought like the doctors are like, oh, he's right there, just keep going, and then like you're still pushing for like another hour, but they're just trying to encourage you to like keep going, like. So I was like, don't lie to me, like be straightforward with me, like I'm not gonna stop pushing, obviously. But she's like, no, you can literally touch his head, like he's right here. And I looked at Ben, I was like, is he there? And he's like, yes, like he's there. So I was pushing, and then I wound up only pushing for 15 minutes, which I think is insane. And he was out, and I felt everything. I felt myself tear. I felt his entire body come out. I felt the ring of fire. I'm convinced my epidural just wasn't even there anymore. I literally felt everything. It was horrible. And I talked to someone who said that they make an epidural so that it wears off right before you have, like right before you push, so that you can actually feel yourself pushing. Which, girl, I did not know that. I thought I was gonna pop out a whole baby and not feel anything. So I was very disappointed with that. But yeah, so basically I felt his head pop out, and then I felt her, it felt like she flipped him and then just kind of like went like this so fast. And I felt like it felt like really, really tight, and then you feel like relief because his head comes out. And then it felt kind of just like jelly, like his body being like pulled out. It was such a strange feeling. And they like suctioned him right when he came out, and they placed him on me. my first thought was that he was just really slimy. It just felt, he just was slimy. Like that's like I don't know, it was strange. He was just so slimy. And they were like sectioning his airways and things, and then they brought him over to the table and they were like wiping him off, cleaning him up and all that.
Yeah, you'll be getting a good bath today, huh? I'm gonna take him off this wet one, and then, hold on.
We're going.
Okay.
Wow.
Still pooping, all right.
And then my doctor had told me like push a tiny bit, like just one tiny push, and then my placenta came out. And then she was stitching me up and everything. The baby was just like laying on my chest. And yeah. He's really looking around. Yeah, you are. He was so cute. He opened his eyes like right away and he was just like looking at everyone, and he was looking at me, and he was just like looking around, and you can see him like trying to look up at Ben. He's literally lifting up his head to look at
He wants to look at you, yeah. Here, Ben, one.
But yeah, then my doctor started like stitching me up and stuff. She said I had a small tear like at the upper part of my vagina, which I'm like, what's the date? I'm like 2.5 weeks postpartum, and I still don't really know where my stitches are. I know I have stitches, don't really know where the location is, but whatever. But yeah, he came out and he was just so cute. He literally looked exactly like Ben, and I'm just gonna insert like a bunch of pictures and stuff of him at the end of this. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. That is my labor and delivery story, and I will be talking more about what happened after the fact. There was a few things that happened with me, with the baby and all that after he was born, and just talking about my postpartum experience and all that. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. If you have any questions or anything for me, or if I left anything out, or anything that you're just like interested in knowing about labor and delivery, please leave it in the comments. I will answer anything that you guys want to know. I'm a very open book. I'm not opposed to talking about anything online. Having a child is a very crazy experience on your body, and I don't think anyone's gonna, I don't know. I'm just very open to talking about it. I don't think it's weird at all. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.